With Valentine's Day right around the corner, what better way to celebrate than to make some incredibly delicious, creamy and smooth, vegan, gluten-free white chocolate truffles. So let's go ahead and make some together. So go ahead and grab your mise en place and I'll meet you back here when you're ready. The first thing that we're going to do is grab a pot and place it on the stove and boil some water. Your bowl should be big enough to just fit in it, but not be sitting in the water. So you only want to fill the water up enough that it's not touching the bottom of the bowl. So next we're going to add our cacao butter. Now, cacao butter is actually the same thing as cocoa butter. They're just processed differently. So they're both from the bean of the cocoa plant. And as soon as you grab this cacao butter, you're going to think that smells just like chocolate, but don't eat it yet because it won't be chocolate until the sugar is added to it. So it usually comes in these chunks like this. Sometimes you can get it in a big, large block. How we're going to prepare it is just going to cut it into small pieces. So we're just basically going to hold it and slice it. And you can see it just breaks up into pieces like this. And the reason that we're doing that is just to increase the surface area so that it melts more evenly and doesn't take as long. You could use all cacao butter and no coconut oil for this chocolate recipe. However, if you do that, it's going to be quite a strong and rich chocolate. And a lot of people find it just too rich, including me. The cacao butter will melt quite quickly, so we want to move on to the next step. And remember to keep water away from all the surfaces. So we're just going to give it a quick wipe. And now we're going to use our vanilla bean and get out some of those vanilla bean pods. In order to get the seeds out of the vanilla bean pod, what you need to do is just to slice it down the middle. So we're just going to start with a small knife and give it a gentle slice. You don't want to cut all the way through to the other side. And then you just sort of peel it open and you can see in there the black. Those are actually the vanilla bean seeds. So let's see there. There it is. So we're just going to scrape those off. And what I like to do is actually to place it in with my salt. So you just kind of open it this way and then scoop it in. It's like I didn't cut quite all the way through. So I'll just go over it again, open it up, and you just kind of press this way. This one actually has a lot. So we're just going to use half. So I use about that much there of the vanilla bean. So if it's quite a large vanilla bean pod, you may only need to use half, but if it doesn't have a lot of seeds inside, then you may need to use the whole thing. So I'm going to set this aside because I can use that again later if there's still half of it. And then what I like to do is to actually just kind of pinch the salt together with the vanilla bean. And I find the salt then just keeps the vanilla bean separated a little. There we go. If you get some of the cacao butter on your hands while you're cutting it, just rub it in. It is an amazing moisturizing oil. So once your water is boiling, then what you're going to do is just turn your stove off. Place my bowl on top, and now this is my double boiler. So I'm going to place my coconut oil and all my cacao butter in the bowl, and it will just begin to immediately melt. So you can just give it a whisk, and you just want to make sure to keep water completely away from this. You don't want any water getting into your cacao butter or any of your chocolate at all, or as it's melting or in any of the process as we're doing it, because it will actually cause the chocolate to seize and it will separate, and it's pretty sad after all the work. So just allow it to melt. Doesn't take very long at all for it to all melt and be incorporated. And then when you see that it's all melted, then you can begin to add your other ingredients. The salt that we mixed in, the Himalayan sea salt that we mixed together with the vanilla bean. And just whisk that in. Then next we're going to slowly add in the sugar. And what I like to do is just put it through a sieve, because just in case there's any clumps in it, we had just made this in our Vitamix. So most likely there isn't any clumps, but it clumps together fairly easily, so you never know. So I just sift in a little at a time and then whisk it in. This version with the powdered sugar is going to give us a chocolate that's a little stiffer than the version with the maple syrup. Maple syrup makes it not set the same, so it becomes a softer, more truffle-like version. This will be a little bit stiffer, more like a white chocolate bar. It's a lot easier to pour this version with the powdered sugar into our molds and make the heart shapes than it is with the maple syrup version. The maple syrup version doesn't harden as much when it chills, and it's more of a nice, lovely, soft truffle texture. However, it doesn't set as well in those little molds, and it's quite difficult. So those are lovely to roll up into balls and then roll into your favorite toppings, like some pistachios or something like that. And because it's still over the heat, but the heat's turned off, we don't have to worry about it becoming too hot or anything burning. Or we also, on the other hand, don't have to worry about it solidifying. And if you get to the bottom and there's some lumps, you can just press them through. It's not a big deal. Just gently. And then you see there's still some crystals left over, so it's a good thing that I didn't put that all through. Once this is all incorporated, then I'll add my coconut milk powder. Instead of coconut milk powder, some people use soy milk powder for making chocolate. I love coconut, first of all. I'm obsessed with coconut. And also, there's a lot of allergies to soy, so this way, I figure lots of people can enjoy it. And if you're allergic to coconut and nuts,
then you could try just using cacao butter, no coconut oil, and soy milk powder rather than coconut milk powder.
But if you're allergic to coconut, you can also try using cashew nut butter, making your own or buying it, just pure cashew nut butter. Ooh, and that's beginning to smell and look so much like chocolate. I'm so excited. So we're just going to add a little bit at a time, just like we did with the powdered sugar. So it's a little bit more stirring than the maple syrup version, but like I said, it depends on what you prefer. If you prefer a really nice soft truffle, then you'd probably prefer the maple syrup version, but if you want to pour it into molds, this will definitely save you. And I'll show you what I mean when I try to take the maple syrup made ones out of the mold, and you'll see they stick and they just don't look perfect, but my family still loves it, so I do it that way sometimes. I also roll them. Okay, and when you have chunks like this, you can just break them up and let it go through. And we're just going to slowly add it. If we ever feel like it's starting to get thick, it will thicken a little bit, but if it's starting to get thick where we can't easily stir it, then that's too much. So we'll just slowly whisk it in just so we make sure we don't add too much, just because everyone's going to have their coconut milk powder probably from different companies made different ways, and same with our cacao butter and that. So this way we just make sure that all of our chocolate turns out perfect. Now, this is a lovely smooth texture, but it does have a tiny bit of grit to it because of the coconut milk and the sugar. So what we're going to do is just throw it into the blender and make sure it gets nice and smooth. But you don't have to do that if you don't mind it being, not super smooth. Then you can just go ahead and pour it directly into the molds when you're finished this. And when it gets to the consistency and it looks the right creamy color to you, you can stop. You don't have to add all of it. It will still make a delicious chocolate. Okay, so there we are. So that is nice and hot, so be careful when you pick it up. Lift up our bowl and give it a wipe and make sure there's absolutely no water on the bottom, and make sure all the water is off, because if water gets in there, it will cause it to completely seize. So, and then I'm just going to wipe off the sides and get it in there. It is now a lovely pourable chocolate, but you can see it's not super smooth yet. So we're going to throw it into the blender. So let's head over. Okay, so I'm just going to take that chocolate. I might just give it a little taste. That is good. But you can definitely feel a little bit of a texture to it. So I'm going to pour it into my Vitamix. Now I have 2 containers for my Vitamix. Mine came with this small one. So this size is excellent for blending this small amount of chocolate that I've made. So you could either put it in a food processor or a high-speed blender. I think high-speed blenders works a lot better. Okay, So now we'll just put it onto the water base and we'll give it a mix. So after blending it for about 2 or 3 minutes, it should be nice and smooth. So now I like to use just a little Pyrex measuring cup, anything that's a little spout that makes it easier to pour. And then you're just going to, it can be quite hot. So if you're using one like this, it's a little more difficult to release the steam, but if you have a regular container, you can just pull the little top off, let the steam out. Just be really careful. Then we're just going to pour it in. It's a lovely, smooth chocolate. Oh yes, that's nice. So then I'm just going to take a whisk and just make sure to whisk it a little. And we're going to take our molds, which we have definitely put on a tray because we're going to pick this up and carry it over to the refrigerator. And these are folding. So you want to make sure that you've placed it on a tray first. And I'm also going to put some different flavors in my chocolate. So you can put whatever your favorite spice is. So I'm going to add some little kind of embellishments to my white chocolate. I'm going to add some pistachios, some dried mangoes, which I'm going to sprinkle with a little bit of cardamom. Cardamom is just one of my favorite spices. So just going to sprinkle all of that on. And also I have some dried cranberries and blueberries. I'll just mix it up with my fingers. And some people put it in the mold first, but because my molds all have these pretty designs, what I'm going to do is whisk my chocolate a tiny bit. And then I'm going to pour a little tiny bit in the mold, then add what I would like in there for my flavoring. You can add any flavoring you like. Just make sure it's not water-based. If it is water-based, it'll cause the chocolate to seize. I'm going to sprinkle pistachios in, putting in either my dried fruit, just a few in each, or the nuts, or you can do anything that you want. You can add a little oil, like a rose oil or orange oil, anything that you'd like. If you have a mold that doesn't have a design like these ones do, then you can just go ahead and throw in your nuts in the bottom like this and then pour it in. So depending on the size of your molds, you may get about a dozen truffles from this exact recipe. So let's go ahead now. We've let it set for a few minutes on the counter, and now we're going to put it in the refrigerator. And this way it will set.
Within the hour, you can give it a try.
The other option in making these truffles is to roll them. If you don't have a silicone mold like this one, where you can just pour the chocolate in and then pop them out, what you can do is you can just pour the chocolate into a bowl. Try using a shallow bowl like this. That's kind of wide but shallow. And I just poured mine in and I put it in the refrigerator for an hour. It could be a little less, a little more, depends. And then you just kind of scoop it up into a ball and then take small pieces and it rolls just perfectly. And look at that. And then you can take it and roll it, for example, in some nuts. So I have a bowl here with some pistachios. You could roll it in some lovely fresh coconut. And if you'd like to learn how to make your own coconut flakes at home, it's incredibly easy. And I'll be posting the link to my video to show you how here soon. It's so easy to roll and it's quite nice and soft and lovely. And just choose your favorite things to go with white chocolate and then you're done. So my truffles came out of the refrigerator now and I'm ready to take them out of the molds. I'm so excited. So as you can see here, these were some of the ones that I made with the maple syrup rather than the powdered cane sugar. And you can see they worked out great, but they are a lot softer. So if that's what you enjoy, you would like these. The only thing I would say is with using the maple syrup is that they do tend to separate. So there'll be oil on the top. So it's difficult to get out. The ones with the powdered sugar are more like a real chocolate. So let's pop them out and see how they look. So just really gently push them out. Oh, look at that. It's beautiful. I love it. These will melt at room temperature, so you have to keep them in the refrigerator. Let's give it a taste. Oh my goodness. It's still fairly soft. I could do with a little bit longer in the refrigerator, but I couldn't wait. It's so good. I hope you enjoyed making them with me, and I hope that your Valentine loves it as much as we did. Oh, this one is so cute.